Good evening, everybody. Today's piece of media will be Casey at the Bat, a very famous poem by Ernest Thayer. If you haven't already read this poem or are not familiar with it, I strongly recommend reading it. I'm particularly enamored with heroes and heroes in their narratives, whatever form that may take. But I was recently rereading Casey at the Bat, and I realized that this is, of sorts, a heroic poem, with the heroic figure being Casey in this particular instance. But if you know, Casey is not portrayed in a particularly positive light. The poem discusses a baseball game and Casey as its central figure in very high terms. Makes a large drama out of it. And kind of pokes fun at Casey in a way. We can view it as very light deconstruction or analysis of heroic tropes and archetypes. Keeping with many heroic tales and narratives, this story teaches a very simple moral or lesson, which is don't let your ego get the best of you. I see in many narratives nowadays that the heroes are very egotistical and frequently do not get punished for this or learn their lesson, imparting that moral to the audience that is viewing said narrative. This is not the case for this one, and because it is not structured as a typical heroic tale, in fact, that's basically the entire message of the poem. It's very effective in that manner, which I appreciate. It's something that we need to be reminded of in this day and age. Another reason why this poem is very effective as a piece of comedy and parody as well is the subject matter juxtaposed with the language used to write the poem. Clearly, it's talking about a baseball game, which is a very low-stakes leisure activity for most people, but uses very complex and high language to talk about it. Of course, choosing poetry as a format in the first place is already genius for that, because typically poetry of that sort has rhyme and meter, which is already, you put a great deal of thought into that, and comes across as a more complex and difficult to understand piece of literature, I feel. Although it also, there are forms where that's not the case, but Thayer deliberately chose to write it like that in this particular poem. And again, there's a great history of heroic poems that we refer to as epics now, and Thayer draws on those when he writes Casey at the Bat. He's trying to allude to those, in my personal opinion. So that makes the juxtaposition of the subject matter and the language used to write it at odds with one another, which I feel enforces the point a little bit more. This is a very American poem. There's a stereotype that Americans are very self-centered and narcissistic, and combined with the subject of baseball, America's pastime, I think this is very topical for Americans, and I'm glad that it was written with that audience in mind. Again, I don't think it would have been as effective if it took place somewhere else or with a different framing subject matter other than a baseball game. The audience is particularly important in this instance. Again, in my opinion, I unfortunately cannot speak for anybody else, but after all, this is about me and what I think about media. So, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it.